Just a few housekeeping things. SB 867, which is item number 7 on the file by Senator Padilla, has been pulled and will not be part of today's agenda. AB 805 and 806 by Assemblymember Torres, items number 10 and 11 are on consent. That was posted a little bit late, so those are on consent, and we won't be having a presentation unless something comes up between now and when we go to consent. Thirdly, we want to welcome 2 new staff people. Eric Thornton has joined the committee staff. We got him from the Legislative Analyst Office, and we're pleased to have him here, and his sense of humor, which you will need. And the Republicans, we're happy to have Doug Yoakum joining us, who will handle housing issues for the Republican caucus. Eric will be working on transportation issues. So we will start as a subcommittee. Mr. Lamalfa, would you like to come up and give us your views on high-speed rail, perhaps?
Probably a mystery.
So this is item number 1, SB 22, by Senator Lamalfa in regards to high-speed rail. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the chance to speak on SB 22 once again, and I appreciate the very robust and full-length opportunity to present some months ago here, and so I will try to be much more compact this time. Also, to our chairman of the Select Committee on High-Speed Rail, thank you for your indulgence, and to the chairman of Trans as well for allowing me to sit in on committee on the high-speed rail last month and a half ago. So very interesting topics, got a lot of people's attention around the state. So on SB 22, I still believe that this would save billions of dollars by halting the sale of any additional bonds for the High-Speed Rail Authority. We have agreed to accept amendments to ensure that the bill today functions as it should, because it's basically adjustment of dates from first introduced. As we know, and we're fully vetted on, the several developments on high-speed rail have surfaced, with the authority themselves admitting that the project's cost had tripled from what was originally on the ballot in 2008, from approximately $33 billion for the Anaheim to San Francisco link to $98.5 billion as in the most recent plan, which really contradicts what the authority made while testifying on this bill last year. Secondly, the nonpartisan field poll found that nearly 2/3 of Californians believe the project should be placed on the ballot for reconsideration, and by a 2-to-1 margin, they would repeal the project if asked tomorrow on a possible vote. The legislative analyst testified that the authority's do business plan fails to create an actual high-speed system and likely violates California law under Prop 1A. Next, investigative reporters determined the authority has misled the public with job creation claims. The 1 million jobs reported, the authority claimed, are really more like 20,000, with possibly twice that many in spin-off jobs in the region. Finally, the High-Speed Rail Peer Review Group, created by the legislature as part of Prop 1A and the mission of high-speed rail to advise on the project, and was staffed with transportation experts, has recommended that state funds be withheld due to poor planning and an absence of federal and private funds to augment the bonds in Prop 1A. The peer review group stated the following: we cannot overemphasize the fact that moving ahead on the high-speed rail project without credible sources of adequate funding, without a definitive business model, without a strategy to maximize the independent utility and value to the state, and without the appropriate management resources, it represents an immense financial risk on the part of the state of California. That, coupled with a lot of rumblings coming out of Washington and efforts legislatively to not only stop funding in the future, but perhaps to even claw back some of the money, as they put it, that has been put aside for the first segment in the valley, shows that there's a lot of non-confidence in the project statewide and at the federal level. So without seeing a dramatic influx of private funding in California's fiscal condition, I don't see how we can let $9.95 billion from our state sources when the feds are trying to pull theirs back and the private money is not stepping forward. So I'm asking this committee to consider today SB 22 and moving it forward. I'm happy to work with the committee on what we need to do to make it a vehicle that works well for everybody, but in comments I'm hearing from fellow legislators on both sides of the aisle, the confidence has really dropped as well. And so it's a bipartisan thought process that maybe more time needs to be allowed before this happens, maybe a pause of a year, or we're going to very soon contemplate actual expenditures on a budget process. And I don't see the confidence this legislature has to do that. So if we could move this vehicle, I think it's befitting with what maybe the mood of the legislature is, and certainly of the public. Lastly, well, I'll save this for the close. If there's anybody that else would like to speak on it, I'll pause at this moment.
Let's see if there is. Is there anyone in support of Mr. LaMalfa's bill who would like to speak at this time? Anyone opposed to the bill? This whole section of the room is moving forward. Perhaps you could start to disperse, not all sit together. Mr. Curtin.
Chairman, members, Danny Curtin, California Conference of Carpenters. I am a supporter of Keynesian economics, which is countercyclical investment in general. But I think in particular, investing in infrastructure for the future is a very, very important thing. And I know there's been a lot of opposition to some of the specifics of the plan, and I want to express my opposition to this particular bill, but I would also like the committee to take cognizance of the frustration that has led to this bill. There are a lot of questions to be answered. I think this bill essentially will allow the legislature to avoid responsibility for trying to make the plan work. And I believe there are ways to enhance this plan that are quite dramatic. I've been circulating a letter, not specifically about this bill. I think it's time for the legislature to weigh in on how this plan is supposed to play out. All of the state needs to benefit. We have $13.5 billion to spend on a high-speed rail plan. I don't think there's a guarantee that we'll see a lot of money from the federal government in the near future, but we can do a lot of very, very good work with $13.5 billion. And I'd be happy to discuss it further, perhaps in another bill or even here, but I think investing in urban corridors that have tremendous congestion and at the same time fits into the High-Speed Rail Authority plan, the blended sections that they talk about, would be something that you need to investigate very, very dramatically. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Tim Smith, State Chairman for the Rail Conference of the Teamsters, and I'd like to present our side of the issue. We are opposed to this bill. We feel that it is imperative that the state of California get going with this particular project. We think it means a lot of jobs, not only for my people, but for people all the way across the board, organized labor and non-organized labor. If we're to start turning the economy around in this state, we have to start making some investments. I haven't seen the private sector step up in anything. As we all know, there's $2 trillion worth of money in the private sector as we know it, and as I understand it, they're not creating any jobs yet. So I do believe that we need to be progressive. We need to step forward in the state of California and do the right thing and thereby secure the economy. So if you have any further questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. We represent about 350,000 unionized construction workers in the state of California. And I like to associate myself with the previous comments, obviously, and add a couple of my own, which are, this is a project, this is one of the few projects that the state can actually, state lawmakers can use to create jobs in the state. Selling bonds and putting people to work is what's needed right now. And I acknowledge issues, problems, negative press, whatever you want to call it, about the High-Speed Rail Authority and the project. Yes, there are questions out there. We want to keep working towards answering those questions, making this process work and be as transparent as possible. But to completely stop the project from happening and stop moving forward, I think in this economic climate is the wrong thing to do. It's going to be tough, but we need high-speed rail now. We're going to need it in the future. We need the jobs now, and this is an excellent job-creating project that I think should continue to move forward. So for those reasons, we oppose.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next.
Mr. Chair, members, Mr. Lamalfa, my name is Mark Kyle with Operating Engineers Local Union Number 3. I'm in agreement with all the previous speakers sitting at the table. I just want to add a couple of comments. The business plan is still accepting comments until January 15th, so it's a work in progress. So there isn't a final business plan yet. There's been a lot of comments, both negative and positive, to the authority, and it's my understanding the authority's been listening and will incorporate a lot of the comments from a number of the folks in this room, as well as many others throughout the community. The authority will be finalizing the EIR-EIS for the initial construction segment at the end of next month, at the end of February. So again, some of the environmental concerns that exist today will hopefully be addressed and not exist in another 45 days. And there's also a discussion, as I'm sure all of you have read in the paper and probably heard through the grapevine, of a possible reorganization, as has been proposed by the governor's office, of the authority. So the fact of the matter is things are moving, they're developing, and we stand in opposition to Mr. Lamalfa's bill. We believe it's premature at best and unnecessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Shane Gussman on behalf of the California Conference of Machinists and the California Teamsters Public Affairs Council, opposed to the bill. Our members of both of these unions hope to be involved in every aspect of this project, from building it to building the trains and then eventually operating them. I don't know, with respect to the jobs numbers, I think we can argue all day long how many jobs this project will create. In our view, it's going to be a lot of them, and we need the jobs. Our members are suffering record unemployment, and this is, one of the things we have going to create some jobs here in the state, particularly in some areas where unemployment is particularly high. So we think this is the wrong time. Whatever criticism you have of the way the thing's been handled so far, it's the wrong time to kill the project. So we urge a no vote on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Gussman.
Mr. Chair, members, Sarah Flocks of the California Labor Federation, also in opposition to this bill. At the meeting of the Select Committee on High-Speed Rail, it was said that there are going to be a number of hearings, probably several every month, on the high-speed rail business plan, the funding plan, and the project. There is a process in place. And we oppose this bill because it would stop the project and stop that process of review. We have new leadership at the authority, both the executive director and with new members on the High-Speed Rail Authority board. They've put forth a very realistic, a reasonable, and thorough business plan, and that needs to go through the process before any major decisions are made. Essentially, by moving this bill and stopping the project, we're going to send those billions of dollars back to the federal government, along with all of the jobs that it could create. So we would say that we need to go through this process, look critically at the business plan, and build high-speed rail the right way. Thank you.
Tim Krems, Operating Engineers. I would also associate myself with the other comments, but as a legislature, as a committee, as you know, you're vested with several immense powers, one of them being to review the will of the voters when they pass an initiative. And I think this bill will cut that review short, and I think the legislative timeline here is dictated by a budget, and I think this will cut short your ability to review, maybe craft a compromise and work for a better solution. And I think you're now given basically a 4 or 5 month at best when you're going to pass a timely budget in June, maybe a little longer, we're not sure, but I think this bill will cut that process short. So we're in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Seeing no one, committee members have questions of any of the people commenting, Mr. Lowenthal and then Mr. Gaines.
Thank you. I just want to, I heard that comment. I know that we have 2 new members of the High-Speed Rail Authority, but you mentioned a change in the executive director?
Just Van Arn.
What about?
Just that he's a newer leader of the authority. Not that there's anyone new. It's Mr. Van Arn.
Thank you.
It's all relative, Senator Lowenthal. As you well know, in a pre-term limited world, you would be newer in this building. In term limits, you're very senior. Mr. Gaines?
So there we go. Yeah, my comment just is that clearly we need to create jobs. I don't have any issue with that. I support infrastructure. But I'm very worried about what's happened with high-speed rail. When we take a look at something that was proposed to the voters at $33 billion, and now we're looking at, I think it's 118 was the last figure I saw. That causes real pause for me. And I think Senator LaMalfa's is a good proposal. I would imagine that it would stop funding, and that would give us an opportunity to reflect on, you know, if we can go down this path in such a way that we can be fiscally responsible. And if we can't, then we ought to figure out a plan B. But I guess I wouldn't want you to think that we shouldn't be working on infrastructure in the state of California. Clearly, we're using up bonding capacity for the state of California that could be used for roads and bridges and dams and other issues that we need to address here in the state. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may comment just on that for a second.
Certainly, Mr. Curtin.
I think the task in front of this committee and the legislature as a whole is to try to find a way to take the $13 billion that we've approved and maximize that money with building in areas that will attract private funding. I believe those areas are out there. I believe you will find responses if you look for them. And also building in areas that have local transportation money that will be building their transportation corridors, but can work in conjunction with high-speed rail to fit the needs of both. So you can actually maximize that $13 billion, perhaps double, maybe even triple. And I believe you will see proposals of that nature in the coming months off of some of the conversations that you'll be hearing. I know there's a peer review group report coming in, which may help direct that a little bit. So I appreciate your comments, but I think there are options out there. I wouldn't focus on $100 billion yet, but there are things that can be done that could be done now with the money we have.
Anyone else? Just a couple comments, and I'll let Mr. LaMalfa close. We're still hearing this as a subcommittee, and we'll take it up once we get a few more members. I want to thank all the comments, and while I share, and I think this has been expressed both in committee meetings and in the press, my frustration with Mr. LaMalfa, I've drawn a separate conclusion at this point. Senator Lowenthal and I and Senator Simitian have mentioned in the last hearing that Senator Lowenthal and I heard, both chaired, when we heard the draft plan for the business plan and anticipating the final plan coming forward, that we're already trying to schedule subsequent hearings to that for information. So while I share your frustration, I agree with Mr. Curtin. I've had lots of discussions myself personally with both colleagues, the new members of the authority, and with the administration and people who are critical of it, and I'd like to continue to have those conversations. I do think there's an ability to use the resources that we have in a more effective and efficient way to actually remedy near-term needs and still be able to keep consideration for a more robust 30 to 50-year rail plan for California, and I have in the works a bill to that effect. So while I am sympathetic to your frustrations, and I think I've been honest about expressing those, I'm not at the point that I would be supportive of the bill, because I think it would curtail our ability to continue to work on this. Having said that, I think we're right up against it. I think we're at a point in the next few months where we truly have to make some very significant decisions, and to the authority, I without being disparaging, I think they clearly have to hear that the legislature's patience is worn out, at least for me, on the way they've proceeded in the presentation and the implementation of their vision, and it's time to really look at that very closely. So won't be supportive today, but if it counts for anything, Senator LaMalfa, I share some of your pain when it comes to the project. Any other comments? We'll let, before you close, we have a quorum, so we'll ask the Secretary to call the roll so that we can actually vote on your bill.
Senators Desaulniers?
Here.
Desaulniers present. Gaines?
Aye.
No.
Oh, present. Sorry.
Gaines present. Harmon? Huff? Kehoe? Here. Kehoe present. Lowenthal? Present. Lowenthal present. Pavley? Here. Pavley present. Rubio? Simitian.
Mr. LaMalfa, would you like to close?
I would. Thank you. Again, to go back over some of the previous points here, time for more review. Essentially, this bill's been around, the project's been authorized as the bonds for over 3 years now. And so we can review without spending money. And so I think we're on the precipice here of committing not just $13.5 billion, which would build a small segment somewhere if the federal government is still wedded to the idea of building it in the middle of the valley where the farmers don't want it, the dairies don't want it, the processors don't want it. You have an area that may not even be legal and pass the muster of Prop 1A, and that it be an electrified rail that actually goes somewhere. That said, committing $13.5 billion doesn't build the whole route. We need to see a true plan that's going to build the whole thing if it's going to be built. And I have not heard any arguments yet that have really identified how that's going to happen. We hear we need jobs, or we hear we need to be like China. We hear we need to look forward and not be left behind by Europe. I have not heard anywhere a true plan that's going to make this work. If the Valley doesn't like it and the South Bay area doesn't like it, we're getting down to just a few people that are going to benefit from making money off of it that seem to like it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the American way. But we, as stewards of the taxpayer dollars and this bond indebtedness, we have to care what it costs. We're seeing the private sector is not stepping forward because they have no confidence that it'll make money, that it'll work, that at all. And so why would we spend public dollars for something that people in the private sector who have to meet a bottom line, unlike government, why would we put ourselves in that position? So that's why I bring it forward. We're talking about the number of jobs again. I mean, these people tried to represent for a while that there would be 1 million jobs with a straight face. I did a little quick math, and I'm going to close. If you took 520 miles and multiplied that by 5,280 feet, that's 2.74 million linear feet. If you lined up 1 million people shoulder to shoulder, they would all be shoulder to shoulder over 520 miles. So I guess the jobs would be that they could take care of polishing their 3 feet segments of rail, and you'd have 1 million jobs. That was for you, Mr. Chairman. So that said, when the real estimates are 4,500 permanent jobs on the rail, we're a heck of a lot farther off from where we even thought we were. So if we have $13.5 billion to spend on some type of infrastructure, let's build a couple of water storage facilities that will turn the jobs back on in the valley and build some more highways that anybody can use at any time with a readily accessible automobile and make a lot more people happy with this. So thank you for hearing me today and for hearing this bill. I would appreciate your aye vote.
Thank you for your comments. Did you come up with those numbers while Eddie was shining your shoes downstairs, or never mind? Senator Gaines, do you have a motion?
Yeah, if I'd like to make a motion for Senate Bill 22 with amendments.
Thank you. There's a motion on the bill. Is there any other comment? Then we'll call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Pavley.
Brief comment, and I apologize for coming in late, and obviously I've read newspapers a lot on this issue the last few months. So I assume there's going to be comprehensive discussion following through on this. We're at the end of a 2-year bill deadline and things. That'll be examining completely the financial ability on this and all options perhaps on the table. So I look forward to a really sort of comprehensive discussion and remain concerned about this project moving forward. It was a voter-approved initiative, and that makes it more difficult to make changes.
I think we're, and I've made comments to that effect, that we are in the process of setting up more hearings right now. Senator Lowenthal is the chair of the Select Committee, myself, and Senator Simitian as the chair of the Fiscal Committee. It's our intention, as we said.
Well, you three, who I know have all voiced in different ways concerns throughout this process, not only in the governance structure, but the financial stability of the project. I look forward to those hearings.
No, they will.
We'll be able to pay close enough attention to make sure that this is a project that the state of California would benefit from.
Exactly.
I totally agree too. Let's keep the discussion going. I mean, we're all about jobs here, so let's find the way that's going to get the most jobs. It does matter what each job costs. So let's be efficient about that and have a whole different attitude on how we're going to have job creation in California. So, thank you.
I think it's fair to say that we're all, in a bipartisan way, fully engaged in the issue, and it's going to be a very intense few weeks that we can't put any of this discussion off any longer. It's going to be right up there with the budget as amongst the most important issues in this building in the next month. And we will be at a decision. If anybody in the authority or anyone thinks that the legislature is ready to just rubber stamp what they have brought to us, I think they're wildly optimistic in the least. So with that, we've got it before us. I ask the Secretary to call a roll, please. The motion is to do pass with amendments.
And we refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Senators Desaulniers?
No.
Desaulniers, no. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Huff? Kehoe? No. Kehoe, no. Lowenthal? No. Lowenthal, no. Pavley? Pavley, no. Rubio? Simidian? Simidian, no.
It's the vote right now is 2 aye votes, 5 no votes. We'll keep it open for the absent members. Thank you, Mr. LaMalfa. Good job on the math. Senator Steinberg, Mr. Pro Tem, you have 2 items, 3 items.
1 on consent.
1 on consent. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Which item would you committee like me to start with?
I think we'll start in chronological order. We'll start with number 5.
Which is?
654.
654. That is the
redevelopment.
The main bill. Mr. Chairman and members, thank you to you, your staff, and the committee members for all being active leaders around the issue of local government economic development, and for your efforts to help save redevelopment through the passage of AB 27 last year. Now that the state Supreme Court has ended redevelopment, at least as we know it, this bill is an important and initial piece of trying to work with our partners in local government to craft a new policy for local economic development and affordable housing in the coming months. This bill specifically is about allowing cities and counties to preserve for affordable housing purposes the roughly $2 billion in outstanding balances in the low and moderate income housing funds maintained by more than 400 of the redevelopment agencies constituted throughout the state. The bill also makes some technical clarifications regarding the obligation of these current agencies to pay back debt owed to cities in question, but the main piece of the bill, again, is to recognize that absent this legislation, this $2 billion plus of funds will be liquidated, will return as property tax to schools, to counties, to special districts in the cities. Not a bad thing, separate and apart from the fact that when it came to the whole redevelopment debate, discussion, and resolution, really, affordable housing, which is such an important and crucial priority for the state, sort of left on the sidelines. This bill is a way to make sure that, at least on a one-time basis, that these funds, which were not part of the budget, are not part of the budget, can be used for the purpose for which they were originally intended, to help people who need to live, want to live in quality housing, have the ability to do so. Low-income residents, people in our workforce who cannot afford expensive housing. The needs are so great and vast. Let's take this money again, which wasn't budgeted, and let's make sure that we help people with housing in our state of California. I'd urge an aye vote.
And of course, you'll take the amendments for the urgency clause.
And of course, the urgency clause, I think, is not just a minor piece of it. I look forward to having conversations with our Republican colleagues throughout this process. We need to put this money to use sooner. It'll be an economic stimulus if we can generate more housing. And I will happily add the urgency clause as an amendment.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. Those who are here in support of the bill.
Mr. Chair and members, Julie Snyder representing Housing California. We're pleased to be a sponsor of the Pro Tem's bill. The Supreme Court decision is devastating for the millions of Californians who are homeless, living in overcrowded, substandard, or otherwise places that they cannot afford on their current incomes. They were already facing increased rents due to the foreclosure crisis. Families are flooding the rental market. We're seeing increased competition throughout the state. As well, we are facing federal home dollars being cut 40% and state bond funds being depleted. And now the main local source of funding has been eliminated by the court decision. And Californians, therefore, must contend with even fewer affordable apartments being built. While not a substitute for the $1 billion that's going to be lost annually under the court decision, SB 654 will keep at least some of the developments that are currently in the pipeline on track. It will provide construction jobs as well as affordable places to live, and therefore we request your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Senator Steinberg, Michael Lane with the Nonprofit Housing Association of Northern California. We're also pleased to sponsor this bill, and I just make a brief point. This is a very narrowly focused bill, and it actually is in line with the governor's original proposal and AB 101 from last spring. And so the point we would make is it was always the intention that local jurisdictions would be able to keep these funds. Unfortunately, that language got changed in AB X 126 in the summer. And so we think it's appropriate, and it actually represented both the original intention, even under elimination, that these low mod funds for affordable housing would be retained as they were accrued to those local jurisdictions. And we think it's absolutely essential that we have this on an urgency basis so that by February 1st we can as jurisdictions have to dissolve their RDAs, we're able to capture at least this money and continue with housing projects that are currently in the pipeline. So we urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Brian Augusta on behalf of the Western Center on Law and Poverty in support of the measure. Obviously, as the Senator said in his opening comments, there's going to be an ongoing discussion, there already is in this building, about what, if anything, comes next. We hope to be part of that conversation because the affordable housing piece of that is so critical. But this is an important measure outside of that discussion for ensuring that those dollars continue to flow. I was just having a conversation in the hallway with some of my friends from the private market rate development community who also do affordable housing, include some affordable housing in their market rate developments. They're looking at this measure as critical because they're the folks that are doing some work right now, putting people to work and building housing, while the rest of the market is going very slowly. So we hope that this measure will get the approval of the unanimous approval of this body so we can move forward and get the money out on the streets.
Thank you.
Lenny Goldberg, California Coalition for Rural Housing. We just heard, just as one example, approximately at stake here are $7 million in funds in San Luis Obispo County. That $7 million leverages all kinds of money. When you think of just one county there, rural county, it makes a huge difference in terms of providing housing, jobs, economic development, and stimulus. So we urge your support.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg.
Mr. Chair and members, excuse me, Maureen Higgins representing the California Housing Consortium, and we are also urging your support of this very important bill. As the Pro Tem says, it allows the money to be used for its original purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins.
Holly Fermini with Platinum Advisors on behalf of Habitat California, a newly formed collective voice of all 49 independent affiliates in California. All affiliates use these funds to build, rehabilitate, and finance affordable home ownership opportunities throughout the state of California for very low and low moderate families. So we urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Ellen Shea, California Association of Local Housing Finance Agencies and the California Association of Housing Authorities. We support this bill for the reasons stated and also for the benefit of the residents who will be living in those housing units when they're finished.
Mia Kong with the California Infill Builders Association, representing real estate developers exclusively building in infill locations throughout California. We strongly support the Senator's legislation. It's critical for the economic growth and prosperity of California to continue to support affordable housing in California. It stimulates not only economic activity, provides affordable housing, but thousands and thousands of construction jobs throughout California, and we urge your aye vote.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Patrick Sablehouse. I'm here on behalf of the California Council for Affordable Housing. We strongly support this bill, and I do especially because the good senator is my senator here in Sacramento, and he only does good legislation. But more importantly,
we all agree with that.
That's
seriously.
Thank you. All in favor?
It's hard. The point I would make that no one has specifically mentioned, I think that without SB 654, there is a great deal of uncertainty with regard to the low-income housing tax credit program administered by the Treasurer's Office, and whether the commitments that people had on their projects for this first round in March of 2012 may very well be in jeopardy because the lenders and the syndicators who are buying the credits have some consternation as to whether or not those commitments are really good. And I think this bill would clarify that and give comfort to the lenders and syndicators that are supporting the financing of the developers. Thank you very much.
Anyone else from Sacramento who would like to say nice things about their representative? Mr. Lipper, you don't count.
My name's Steve Eggert. And I am a constituent of Senator
Oh, jeez.
And we're also multifamily developers, and we operate statewide, and we are here to support 654 for the purposes that Pat Sablehouse talked about, specifically the uncertainty right now with projects that we as a for-profit builder have in transition right now. And I think this is a very helpful bill to help with the transition to a new regime, and we would appreciate your support.
Okay. Anyone else in support? Anyone in opposition? Mr. Lepper, do you want to get up at this time? Senator Lowenthal, you had a comment or a question?
First, I'm very pleased that the pro tem, and I'm not a constituent of the pro tem.
In a matter of speaking?
In a matter of speaking, but I want to, and I think we've had a very good discussion on what the pro tem has described as the key component of the bill, and that being the ability of agencies to retain the funds in terms of the housing funds, and I think that's critical. I'm glad to support it, but I also think we need to mention the other part of the bill too, in that when you began, Mr. Pro Tem, you really talked about creating a partnership as we go forward. I think that the ability, we listened to those agencies and those cities that said we need clarification as we move forward in terms of what loans are considered enforceable obligations, and you responded to that by in a very appropriate way. I think it sends the right message out to local governments. This is a time for partnerships. This is a time to work together, and I hope we continue in that spirit in the next few months. And I am glad to support this bill.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Senator Steinberg, would you like to close? We do have a technical amendment as well, I'm sure you're aware of, and just for the record, that is a confirming amendment on the definition of enforceable obligations.
Thank you. We'll take all the amendments suggested by committee. The only thing that I would note, Mr. Chairman and members, in closing, I said in my opening that last year the governor vetoed this specific bill with a few other pieces to it, and he vetoed it because he did not want any legislation, as he stated, to interfere with the pending litigation. So he did not veto the bill necessarily on substantive grounds. So this is ripe now, and I will say that last year when we passed the bill that he vetoed doing this same thing, there was significant bipartisan support. This was not a partisan vote in any way, and I hope that we can have that same spirit when it comes to this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. We need a motion. Senator Gaines, did you want to make a comment?
Yes.
Moved by Senator Keough.
Yeah, I just want to express my support and thank the President Pro Tem for moving forward with this, because this is a very controversial issue as we are moving forward with redevelopment. These funds need to be applied and used. So I think this is a good transition opportunity for us to make sure that housing dollars are still allocated for housing. So thank you.
With that, we have a motion by Senator Keogh. Senator Steinberg, thank you for this important legislation. To the advocates, thank you for hanging in there, and hopefully we'll be able to come back with a sustainable funding for affordable housing in the long term. So with that, we will ask Secretary to call the roll, please.
The motion is due pass as amended and re-refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Senators Desaulniers?
Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Huff? Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Rubio?
Aye.
Rubio, aye. Simidian? Simidian, aye.
That's 8 positive votes, no votes. We'll leave that on call for the absent members. Your next item, Senator Steinberg, is on consent, SB 749. So your last item is item number 9, SB 901, in regards to air pollution and vehicle retirement programs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief here. This bill simply ensures expenditures from the Vehicle Retirement Program funded under AB 118 of several years ago are spent to reduce the highest polluting cars in those polluted air basins. There's a regulation on this. We simply want to put the regulation into a statute, and I'd urge an aye vote.
Okay. Witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Committee, any comments? Senator Keogh moves the bill. Any comments or questions? Then we'll call the roll. Thank you, Senator Steinberg.
Thank you.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Environmental Quality. Senators Desaulniers?
Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Gaines? Aye. Gaines, aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Huff? Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Rubio? Rubio, aye. Simidian.
The vote is 7-0. We'll leave that on call for absent members. We're looking for Senator Correa, if he's available. If he's not, I'll present.
Would you like to
I will
take
go
a
ahead. Senator Gaines, you are
consent calendar?
duly in charge. Here, have your symbol of authority.
Yeah. Well, he's going to present. He's got item.
Do that. You need
Okay, so we have item number 3 on the agenda, Senate Bill 447, Financial Institutions and Disclosures. Senator Desaulniers.
Thank you, Senator Gaines and colleagues. This came out of a research from the Senate Office of Oversight and Research. We have talked to the Cal Office of Housing and Financing. We're hoping that they will fix this administratively. It's something that I think everyone agrees was a mistake, and basically what was happening was that because of the market, there is a provision in law that says that people cannot buy these homes with this kind of financing that's directed for low and affordable housing tenants or purchasers, and then turn around and rent the property for, I think, what was well-intended ideas. But because of the uniqueness of the market, people were underwater. They were continuing to pay their financial obligations. They were trying to do the best they can for reasons that were out of their control. Unfortunately, they were having the process of being evicted from their homes. This legislation will address that to make it specific that if they're doing everything, they're trying to stay in the homes, pay their obligations, they're current, that they'll be allowed to do that. The authority will take this up, I believe, later this month and try to correct it. This bill is basically just to reinforce that we want to clarify that this won't happen to people who are doing everything that they should to stay in the house, to stay current, and we're also not allowing some kind of loophole that people would actually take advantage of. These kind of financing mechanisms go into the houses and turn around and try to rent them. So this statute remedies the conflict. We're continuing to work with the department to make sure that it doesn't happen again, and I would ask for your aye vote. I'm happy to answer any questions. And we're happy to take amendments.
Okay.
Yes, we're taking my own amendments.
Okay, do we have any witnesses in support? Okay, seeing none. Any witnesses in opposition? Okay, we have a motion. We take a roll call, please.
The motion is due pass as amended and re-refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Senators Desaulniers?
Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Huff? Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Rubio?
Aye.
Rubio, I. Semidian. Semidian, I.
Okay. All right. We have 8 votes, and we're placing on call for Senator Huff. Next item on the agenda is item 4, Senate Bill 616, Common Interest Development Meetings.
That's on consent.
It's on consent. Okay.
So unless people would like me to present on consent.
Number 8.
Because
Okay.
I see a
there we
lot
go.
of
Thank you.
unanimity of shaking of heads.
Okay. Okay, we'll move down to item 8, Senate Bill 878, Regional Planning. Senator DeSaulnier.
Thank you, Senator Gaines. 878 is a attempt to continue a dialogue on seeing if we can improve regional planning in the Bay Area, the 9 Bay Area counties, and I believe the 102 cities that make up the Bay Area, a very dynamic area in this state and this country. There are 5 regional agencies. 3 of them I spent some time on. In 2005, I believe, then Senator Torlakson, my predecessor, who had also been on MTC as I had, presented a bill that would actually started off as merging the Association of Bay Area Governments and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Through that discussion, actually created something called the Joint Planning Committee. That Joint Planning Committee has representatives from all of the regional agencies on it. It's been in effect for some time, and it's done some really good work, particularly around sustainable development in the Bay Area. But this bill would try to continue that good work and add more to it. There's been a lot of discussion in the Bay Area about providing an economic development package of regional governance. And of course, in this environment where we're all concerned about jobs and the economy, this bill would actually ask that as that is developed and is currently being developed by the private sector with the public sector input, that they would report to this committee on how that's going, with the idea that perhaps at some point, as we look at how the regional agencies act, we try to put something more robust on economic development. When you look at other regional areas, particularly in the Seattle area, they actually have a very robust component of economic development when they look at transportation and land use, and they work with the private sector, I think, very effectively. And I think in California we could add that to the regional governance along with very robust transparency and looking out into the community. So it would require them to report on that. It would also require them to report on what they're doing and they're currently doing right now as part of SB 375 and sustainable communities. And then lastly, it would, amongst other things, but I think these are the 3 most important, it would report on their efforts for outreach and transparency in big regional areas. I think it's my own personal belief that regional governance is one of those things that the average voters is not aware of. The more transparency and the more outreach and the more education that these agencies can provide, that's better for democracy and better for our constituents. These are complicated issues, but I think regional governance is playing a more and more important role in California in multiple ways. So this is meant to just further engage with regional governance in one part of the Bay Area and one part of California, I should say, in the Bay Area, and also add actually 2 components, the outreach and the transparency, which all of the agencies do now, but hopefully we can do a better job at it, in my view, and then the economic development aspect. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I look forward to working with the regional agencies through the process, and that's the intention as I present this bill.
Great. Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. Witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Okay. We have someone coming up. How are you?
Hi.
Good.
My name is Joyce Roy. I'm a private citizen, but to tell you where I come from, I'm a retired architect that practiced in New York City before moving to the Bay Area about 20 years ago. And I have, my retirement, I'm looking at the bigger picture rather than individual buildings. So I've been very concerned about the Bay Area smart growth, sustainable development in the Bay Area, and I've served on a number of boards of a number of organizations interested in these same issues, but I speak for myself now. And my main concern is that we have an MPO that includes transportation planning and land use planning. It would also be nice if the air district was in that too. I think there's only 3 MPOs in the United States that don't have land use and transportation in the entity. So I think it's imperative that they are combined if we're really going to implement SB 375. But I fear that the Joint Powers Committee may not be may be a weak vehicle to drive the constellation of regional government because it has not been respected by the NPC. In a recent proposal to have a, quote, regional headquarters, the executive director didn't even consult the Joint Powers Board about this. So, and what is happening, because ABAG is more concerned and conscious of land use and transportation issues, they are not going to move to this new, quote, regional headquarters building because it is not accessible, very accessible by public transportation. So so that's my only concern, because I really don't want this to end up as a report that gets on a shelf. I hope it really can be facilitate the consolidation of these agencies. So I just wonder if there's some way to put a little bit more push into it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, now you in support? I mean,
I'm in support of it, yeah.
Just want to clarify. All right. Thank you.
I'm support of the goals, but I'm not sure this vehicle will quite get to that goal.
Okay.
So,
all right, that's great.
thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, anybody else would like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, do we have any comments, questions? Are we ready for a motion? Okay, we have a motion. We've got a question.
Yes.
Senator Harmon.
Senator, you heard the witness talk about reports that get put on the shelf and ignored, and I think that happens a lot here in Sacramento. What is your vision of what would be done once this report is received? Do you anticipate further legislative action, or what happens after the report comes in other than it sits on a shelf?
Well, I absolutely agree with both you and Joyce. Actually, when I was on the regional agencies, we did an inventory of all the reports since the agencies were created on how to do regional governance better, and there's literally a stack. So it's not my intention to have that be the end results. We've already done that. I think this is a little bit different because we have taken the first, I would say, baby step in creating the Joint Planning Committee. This is just a second. And having said that, it's fully my intention that this session that I'll have at least one bill that goes to some of the things that Joyce talked about, both the relocation of the building, which has been very controversial in the Bay Area, but also regional governance. So this is just one component.
How do you deal with the issue of this is local business, let the local people do it, or Sacramento comes in and says, we've got a better way for you to do it and you need to do it this way? What's your thoughts on that
I think there's a natural tension between those two things. In this case, there's three. There's, well, probably more than that when it comes to the Bay Area, but there is local government, of course, who make up the membership on these regional bodies right now. There's the regional government, which is much larger than those local entities, including the biggest amongst them, which would be Santa Clara County, and the cities, and then the state of California. My view is that this should continue to be, although we have these tensions, we should continue to have this discussion, and it's more important than ever to have those discussions because I think the governor, and I agree with this, there should be more importance to regional governance on transportation, air quality, and economic development, because I agree with Mr. Walters on this. The state's too big to govern, or it's too big to govern in the way we have statewide, but I do think we have a role to play in it, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Senator Simitian.
Well, let me speak up. Thank you. Let me speak up for reports that get sit on a shelf, and I mean that seriously. Senator Saulnier and I served together on the ABAG executive board some years ago. It's how we first got acquainted. I I do think
We may do it again.
I can only hope, Senator. Senator, no, I mean, in seriousness, Senator Harmon raises, I think, a very good point, which is, let's make sure that the things we ask for have real utility if we're going to ask for them. I'm with him on that. But I think there are a couple of observations about reports that come to the legislature. One is the very fact that people have to provide these reports, have to prepare them, means they know that they have to deliver some work product. They have to communicate some work product, some tangible result, and that someone's watching. And that oversight function has some intrinsic value, even if not an awful lot more than the report shows up and it sits on a shelf. When people know that they're going to have to reduce to writing what they have or haven't gotten done, there's a benefit to the public there. The second thing is that not every report will make its way to a committee hearing room like this, but we work through our staffs. In many cases, our professional staffs, our committee staffs, the LAO, folks in the budget office, the Department of Finance, and the fact that they have access to that information is important in terms of helping us as members move through the budget process, make decisions here in committee, informs the judgment of the body when these organizations come before us with their proposals, some of which are well advised and some of which are not. So I didn't mean to be too flip. I'm spot on with Senator Harmon about let's make sure there's utility before we ask for another report. But I do think simply having to deliver some kind of a product that says here's what we're doing and how we're doing it has an oversight value that's important. And I think the fact that it doesn't always rise to the level of public debate in a committee chamber doesn't mean that there isn't still utility in terms of the state having information about that. So thank you.
I would say, Senator Gaines, just consistent with the comments by Senator Harmon and Senator Simitian, it's in the staff report, but this committee had 3 hearings around both this subject matter, a very broad subject matter, and AB 57, which is Assemblymember Bell's bill that would add a appointee to MTC from representing the mayor of San Jose as the largest city in the region and the mayor of Oakland. So those 3 hearings, I am told, and I believe this, actually helped with some of the economic development work that's actually taking place now with the major business groups in the Bay Area, including the Bay Area Council. And they're doing that with their own revenue. So consistent with what Senator Simitian says, there's already some good things happening because of both the hearings and this bill. So with that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Great. That's your close.
Yep.
Thank you. We have a motion from Senator Lowenthal. Great, thank you. If we could go ahead and have a roll call, please.
The motion is due pass and we refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Senators Desaulniers. I'm sorry, did you vote?
Call the roll. Yes. You calling the roll?
I am.
Okay. I don't know. Trouble by the author. Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Huff? Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Rubio? Aye. Rubio, aye. Simitian? Simitian, aye.
Okay, we're going to take consent while we wait for Senator Correa.
Place that on call.
And that one is on call. The vote is 7-1. So consent, we have 4 items on there. We have a motion by Senator Kehoe. Any comment? Any comment from the public? If not, we'll ask the Secretary to call the roll on the consent calendar.
Senators Desaulniers?
Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Harmon? Harmon, aye. Huff? Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley?
Yes.
Pavley, aye. Rubio? Rubio, aye. Simitian.
Okay. Simitian, aye.
Simitian, aye.
We'll place that one on call as well. We're waiting for Senator Correa. The sergeants have... Okay. Do you want to go... Would we like to go back through...
We haven't heard that.
No, we haven't.
Okay, we're waiting for Senator Huff. Maybe the sergeants can at least ask if Senator Huff is going to come, and we can open the roll on those bills that he's missed, and then Senator Correa to present item number 2, SB 149. We're going to open the roll on one item for Senator Rubio. This is file item number 1, SB 22, by Senator LaMalfa.
The motions do pass as amended to the Committee on
The current
Appropriations.
vote is?
The current vote is 2 to 5. Chair voting no. Senator Huff? Rubio? Rubio, no. So that's 3 to 5. Please don't vote again.
Actually, I think it's 2 to 6. That was a no vote from Senator Rubio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just to make sure we get it right.
Yes, yes.
Don't confuse me any further. I trust you. Okay,
2 to 6.
so we're leaving all of the items on call, waiting for Senators Huff and Senators Correa. We're going to lift the call on all of the items while we wait for Senator Correa. Senator Huff, in his new position, is able to add on at a later time. So we'll ask the Secretary to go ahead and we'll work our way through the file on all the open items.
File item 1, SB 22, by Senator LaMalfa. The motion is due pass as amended, and we refer to appropriations. The current vote is 2 to 6. Chair voting no. Senator Huff?
Okay, that bill dies. 2 aye votes, 6 no votes. Item number 3.
SB 447 by Senator Desaulniers. The motion is due pass as amended to the Committee on Appropriations. The current vote is 8 to 0. Senator Huff?
Okay, that bill passes out, 8-0.
File item 5, SB 654 by Senator Steinberg. The motion is due pass as amended to the Committee on Appropriations. Current vote is 8 to 0. Chair voting aye. Senator Huff? That's 8 to 0.
That bill passes out, 8-0.
File item 8, SB 878 by Senator Desaulniers. The motion is due pass to appropriations. The current vote is 7 to 1. Senator Huff?
That bill is out, passes 7-1.
File item 9, SB 901 by Senator Steinberg. The motion is due pass and refer to the Committee on Environmental Quality. Current vote is 7 to 0. Chair voting aye. Senators Huff? Simidian?
Okay. That vote is 7-0. That bill is out.
And on the consent calendar, the current vote is 8 to 0.
Okay, those items are out. The items on the consent calendar and a vote of 8 to 0. We have one item left. Item number 2, SB 149 by Senator Correa, and he, I'm told by the sergeants, is on the way. He has been chairing his own committee, Senate elections. I don't know. It's a good question. Senator Correa.
Should I even bother to present then?
Please go ahead. Try to persuade us to vote no.
Mr. Honorable and
SB 149.
learned
Welcome.
chair, sir.
Oh, my God.
And members of this great committee. The Senate Bill 149, Select Committee on Manufactured Homes has discovered that the majority of problems and complaints come from mobile home parks that are not aware of the existence of a mobile home residency law. This bill amends the Mobile Home Parks Act to require the State Department of Housing and Community Development to include on their annual park operating permit renewals a simple notice of the existence of this law. The cost to the state, about 10 minutes of staff time to upload one-sentence notice on the permit's electronic template. Ask for an aye vote.
I'm sorry. Anyone in support?
Catherine Borg with the Western Manufactured Housing Communities Association in support.
Okay. Anyone in opposition? Mr. Correa, you are taking the suggested amendments, I take it?
I am,
okay.
As author's amendments.
Thank you. We've heard from support and opposition. We've heard that the author is taking the amendments. Do we have a motion to that effect? To approve? I will move it. Any closing comments?
Ask for an aye vote.
All right. We'll ask the Secretary to call a roll.
The motion is due pass as amended, and we refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Senators Desaulniers?
Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Harmon? Huff? Kehoe? Lowenthal? Pavley? Pavley, aye. Rubio? Rubio, aye. Simidian? Simidian, aye.
Okay, you have 5 votes. That's sufficient for passage, but I will hang around and leave it open for a few minutes to see if any of our colleagues want to come
Thank you,
back.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of this great committee.
Thank you, Senator Correa. Sorry for, I know you were chairing another committee. So if the sergeants could just check to see if any of those members who missed that last vote will be here. Thank you all. Okay, we're going to open the roll on item number 2, SB 149. Senator Correa.
Senators Harmon, Huff, Kehoe, Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. So
Okay.
6-0.
We'll leave it open. All right, we're going to close out the roll on file on the last item, file item 2, SB 149. Senator Correa.
The current vote is 6-0. The motion is due pass as amended to appropriations. Senators Harmon, Huff, Kehoe.
All right, that bill is out with 6 yes votes and no votes. Thank you all. We're adjourned.